Page 8, elevators. At the top of the page, they're introducing some new notes for you, and they're talking about ledger lines. So let's talk about all that junk. If you'll remember, we've already had a ledger line. We've had one forever. Middle C between the staves is on a ledger line. That little line that goes through middle C, that's called a ledger line. It's because when you have 5 lines in a staff, you're limited to how many notes. Like treble clef, 5 lines in that staff, I can only go from here to here. I cover these notes in that staff, and that's it. Because E is the bottom line and F is the top line, and I can do the spaces next to them. So that's it. Well, I got a lot more notes than that. So in order to put them in the music, we use ledger lines. And that's just the little lines, and we can just pile them up there above or below a staff. It's just whatever. And here we're going 2 ledger lines above treble and 2 ledger lines below bass. And that's because those are C's. C is kind of symmetrical here in a grand staff. Middle C is in the middle of the grand staff. It's on the ledger line between the staffs here. And if you go 2 ledger lines above treble, it's the C, 2 C's up. That's this C. And if you go 2 ledger lines below the bass clef, it's 2 C's down, it's this C. So it's like C's are symmetrical to the grand staff. And you'll get these C's a lot in music, so just memorize both of these notes. When you see them in the music, 2 ledger lines, it's a C. Just memorize it. You obviously got to move your hand around to get to them, but I'll talk about that when I get to moving the hand around. Now, elevators. It's 2 lines long, treble and bass clef. No sharps or flats in the key signature. We're in the key of C major, 4/4 time signature. Now you think, boy, this is repetitious. I go through this every time. Yes, because it can change, and you got to make sure, is it really the same or did they change something? Yes, I go through it every time when I start a new piece of music. Quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, and I see we're using those C's, and we need to talk about that too, because it involves moving the hand. I'm going to start with the right hand. Quarter notes at first. You're starting thumb here, and that's okay. It's just, and then they want you to lift up to here, this C. Just stretch out, and then you got to lift up here to here. Just lift up and move. Okay. And again. Second line, you just get the chord. Here, you're in this position. And the third measure, that is a D, an F, and a G. You see, when I get chords with a bunch of notes in them, I'm not sure what they are, we do a technique called spell out the chord. That means you take it 1 note at a time in the chord, starting with the bottom note. Music is built from the bottom up, so we start with the bottom, and you just figure it out. So it's a D, an F, and a G, and then you have it. It could have any number of notes in the chord. You could have 10 notes in the chord. It doesn't matter. You simply start with the bottom note and you figure each one out. Here. You'll see this chord so much, eventually you'll get used to it. Left hand, well, you're starting, they don't give you any finger numbers, so I'm going to tell you, go ahead and start here with 5 and 3 on those. And then in third measure, just come up here, just come up a little bit. So I'm just reaching up 2 notes, and you're coming up a note. I'm not really moving. I just stretching it and just spreading the hand out a little bit. Here, here. I'm leaving the little finger here because the next measure I need those notes again. So it's sort of like here. I went from here to here. We do that. Yeah, you get it. And then the second line, you reach up to the C and claps. Now I'm in this position. With the left hand and with the right hand. And then up here, second finger on the B and third measure. I'm back in this position. There. And that's sort of what it is. Now, I'll give you some options here, and you should practice both of these. The fingering in the book is fine. But I also like in the right hand, second measure and the fourth measure. When you're doing this, I can also use 1, 1, 5. Now, rather than 1, 5, 5, I can do a 1, 1, 5, whichever. Generally, the thumb is easier to aim than the little finger. And if it helps you, then do that. Do a 1 here. And in the left hand, same thing. In the second measure here, rather than this, then the thumb, do that. You need to be able to do either one. So I suggest you practice both here. Maybe one time, you just for practice, the first time you'll do it this way, and then 2 measures later do it that way. Just for practice. Normally you wouldn't do that in playing. You would finger a passage the same each time you get it. But I'm saying just for practice, you need to practice both of these fingerings. You might try that too. Or play the whole piece twice, and one time you finger it one way and the other time you finger it the other way. We'll go ahead and follow the fingering in the book for now, but I'm just suggesting to you the other fingering. Now once I have the hands working okay, sort of, then I think about the articulation. They don't give any articulation except they're marking the phrasing. The 2 measure phrases, you lift up, left here. It's like taking a breath. Going on the second measure from here to here, that's not like a phrase. You're lifting up to move, but it's not as long silence as you would between a phrase. This is more like playing repeated notes. When you have to lift up to play a repeated note, there's silence there. Well, this is the same thing. The silence in between them is very short. And that's where practice comes in. You here to here. You got to learn to do that. Over time, it comes. I go a little quick because I've been doing it a million years. But you take your time. You go here, here. You get this. You just practice this. It comes, but at the end of a phrase, that's more of a lift up. It's like taking a breath here. Same thing in the left hand. Lift up between the phrases. See, this is an example of where you don't connect the notes inside a phrase. Even though you have the curved line there, you don't necessarily connect the notes. It's a phrase, and sometimes you can have staccato notes inside a phrase. Technically speaking, I could play all of these notes disconnected here. I could play them all staccato. That's interpreting the music. It doesn't say anything. It's up to you and how you feel it and so forth. For this lesson, I'm connecting them as best I can. Then once I have the articulation, then I think about the dynamics. Moderately loud, mezzo forte, that's the melody. Whatever you think sort of loud is, these chords need to be in the background. And in the second line, now it's the left hand. That's the melody. That's moderately loud. These chords are now in the background. We want to hear the melody. Then the speed, moderato, again in the middle somewhere, has to be accurate. So find a speed you can play this accurately, this moving around bit accurately, and that's going to be your moderato probably. The interpretation of it, again, right here is just basically natural accents. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Feel those. You're lifting up between the phrases, and you can experiment with the staccatos. If you like some staccatos in there, stick them in. I don't care. Let's play this together very slowly to check the notes and the rhythms. Not going to do any dynamics. Well, they don't give you any dynamics, but notes and rhythms. I'm going to play both hands about the same. I'll give us 4 counts. 1, 2, ready, go.